I'm Daniel Breese.
I'm William Turrell, and this is a presentation of how we use technology to improve learning in English.
ICT is seen by some as a foundation subject, and any form of IT should be kept separate from other lessons. Others see ICT as a learning tool which enables children to do things better more easily, or to do things they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. Some think ICT is something that teachers should use to provide targeted activities to match the needs of children in the class. Additionally, some believe that ICT is a teacher's tool to present information in attractive ways such as PowerPoint and worksheets. This shows that technology can be used in the classroom in different ways.
So one way that we looked at using technology in English was via ebooks. So an ebook is an online tool which is basically an online book, and it can use the electronic features such as search functions, highlights and multimedia objects, all of which can be used to improve learning for students of all ages. And a multimodal ebook can be very engaging for students with the combination of things such as sound, images, film and animation, all alongside the text of the book. So they're useful in English for many different reasons. They have universal access, which means that a whole class can access the same book at the same time from anywhere, so at home or in school. They also cover a wide variety of topics for guided reading, and that can link to many subjects and topics all across the national curriculum. The national curriculum states that pupils should have opportunities to exercise choice in selecting books and be taught how to do so, and ebooks can broaden the amount of books that students have to choose from, and that can end up developing a student's desire to read for pleasure. Ebooks also can include informational text, and the national curriculum states that children should be able to draw on reading and research where necessary in their work. Non-fiction ebooks can be an efficient way for an entire class to research things at the same time in a reliable and safe way that just Googling things wouldn't be able to do. They also have specific teaching tools that you could use, such as bookmarking and highlighting, and that can enhance learning. And students with specific needs, such as visual impairments, can be benefited with tools such as being able to change the font size. And teachers can differentiate their lessons with books at different reading levels, so that can challenge children at all different stages in their learning. And lastly, children can creatively make their own ebooks online. So I created some different ebooks. I'll show you those now. This is the first one, mystorybook.com. So I'll just quickly flick through the book. So here's just some screenshots just in case they didn't come up, because as you know, one problem with technology is that sometimes it can't work, and you always have to have like a backup plan. So here is how you sort of made the story, and we thought it was a good resource because the tools were laid out very easily for students to use, but one problem was that the variety of stories that could be made was not that broad because there was sort of a limited amount of items and scenes. So it could like limit the amount of creativity that students had when writing, because their stories had to be about specific things. If they could just draw their own pictures or print their own pictures off and write a story, then they'd be able to be more creative potentially. Also, one issue with the website is that editing text was extremely difficult, because when you tried to do it, the editing box would come above the words that you were trying to edit. So it would be very frustrating for students that maybe made a mistake or wanted to change their story. And it seemed like it could be easier to just write it on paper instead. However, my favourite thing about this resource was the publish, share and print features. Martin Waller's study of using Twitter in the classroom states that the children enjoyed the fact that their thoughts were published for others to see and felt a sense of pride in their writing. So children may be more motivated if they feel like they have an audience and a purpose to what they're doing. So they might work harder on a book that is going to be seen by the people, they could share it with their friends and family, and it would be a lot more interesting for them to do compared to if it was just written in their school book and only their teacher's going to read it. So the second resource was the Lego Comic Builder. Unfortunately, you can't save it, so it's just a very basic view of the website, which is something I'll talk about in a minute. But here is some screenshots of the comic that I made. So the tools, once again, were very good. I thought that the idea of doing a comic was very interesting, because some students might think, oh, books are boring, reading is boring, but if it's a comic, that could come across as more interesting, and the whole idea of Lego could also be more enticing. So the tools were easy to use, there were lots of characters to choose from and different places, so you could make a more creative story based on lots of different things rather than being limited. You can also zoom in and out of the backgrounds to make it more visually appealing, and the characters are very dynamic. They can hold things and they can be moved into different positions. One problem with this resource was that you couldn't save the comic on the website. You could have to download it onto an Adobe Acrobat format, and then that would have to be printed off, and it made the whole resource less appealing, because something that we found really interesting in the last one was how easy it was to distribute to the people, whereas this one you would have to download. And sometimes the website would just completely refresh itself because you clicked a key, and there was no way to save the work without downloading the completed product, so it was very difficult to use in that way. And because what we found interesting about the last one was the ability to share it, we wanted to look more into writing with a purpose and an audience. So we looked at a different resource, which was using social media.
Social media is defined as a digital technology that allows us to communicate and share information using the internet. Schools are often criticised for an inherently conservative approach with their teaching strategies, with some teachers not willing to dramatically change their teaching style despite the dramatically changing technological world around them. Children are spending an increasing amount of time on social media. The Telegraph reported in July that 9% of children in the latter years of primary school are spending in excess of 5 hours a day online. This includes social media. This shows a huge relevance to the lives shows a huge relevance that social media holds over primary school children, and bringing social media into the classroom will bring that relevance in as well. POUR identifies that students who use social media in their studies have a greater motivation to participate in learning due to the excitement experienced when somebody other than the class teacher views and critiques their work. Throughout the national curriculum, there are statements similar to pupils should be taught to maintain positive attitude in reading, but this is a good idea in theory. It's becoming more difficult. BBC Newsround has highlighted in 2012 of a study of 400 English teachers that students are now finding reading boring and much rather spend time online. Upon leaving primary school, children are unprepared for the mental and social pressures brought about by a constant need to be connected to social media. They are suddenly surrounded by huge social pressures over their online image and become too dependent on likes and comments for their own self-validation. Bringing social media into the classroom in a controlled way can be a preparation for this by exposing children to comments about their work from controlled sources. Schools can share information between themselves and other classes or even other schools, meaning that teachers can regulate both positive and negative comments on a child's work. This will help develop online resilience and bring about the mental fortitude to deal with criticism online. It is against the law, however, to have a social media account if you are below the minimum registration age, so as a result, all mainstream social media sites, if you like, are out. However, it is possible for schools to create their own blogs or websites so that people can contribute to that and still be of the legal age. This is a blessing, however, as it means, as I said before, schools can regulate both who can contribute and who can see what's on the thing. The GDPR is the European Union regulations with regard to data protection. Article 8 says that anyone under the age of 16 cannot have their data published without parental consent. So it's vital to ensure that parental consent is gained before any data of the pupils is put in place. And lastly, e-safety and safeguarding. All schools will have an e-safety policy, and some will have a social media policy. It is vital that all ventures into social media for learning are kept within these guidelines, as social media policies and e-safety policies are documents that preserve the safeguarding of all involved. There are a couple of examples at the bottom. any safety policy, and it is named Newham Bridge Primary School, and at the top there is Chew Valley Social Media Policy.
So in conclusion, from looking at these resources, we can see that technology can really help English, but only if the resources are easy to use and they actually have a purpose. Otherwise, if a resource is used incorrectly, lessons can suffer and learning can be slowed down. But when it's used correctly, they can make lessons very engaging and allow students to do things that would be difficult or impossible to do without these resources and their various tools.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay.